So my name is Riem Spielhaus. I'm originally from Berlin in Germany. Right now I'm doing a postdoc fellowship in Copenhagen at the Center for European Islamic Thought of the University of Copenhagen.
What do you think is the most common misconception Americans have of Muslims, and how do you think we got this misconception? Was it 9/11, or is it something else that's involved in our culture?
Stereotypes and misconceptions or ideas about Muslims in the West or in Europe and the US are actually longer narratives that are already grounded in literature, in some fairy tales even, and in some traditional songs. So a lot of the ideas and the images that come out, for instance, that Muslims are more violent, that Muslims would oppress women, and so on. These ideas are actually grounded in the colonial period of Western Europe. And another very important thing, I think, is that Muslims are imagined as a homogeneous group, and all the diversity is therefore missed out, and all the similarities are missed out as well. And the exceptions, the extremist things, the things that you could call fundamentalist, the weirdest ideas and images are picked up and singled out as being typical.
In your experiences, where do people of the Muslim faith have the hardest time or face the worst persecution?
A lot of Muslims that are living in Western European countries or North American countries, in Canada or the US, would think that freedom of religion, the rule of law, and other features like democracy are actually a good thing, and that is why they live there. So, but on the other hand, they might face verbal attacks or even physical attacks by other people living in these countries who think that Muslims might be violent. So that is a real dilemma for a lot of Muslim women and men who are living in countries where they are the minority. But when I talk to people, and even Muslims that would be understood as conservatives, they would often say that they respect democracy very much, and that especially the religious freedom is something that is very important for them in Europe and in the US.
How would you like to see the American public educated? What top 3 things should Americans know about Muslims?
I think most important and the basic thing is that Muslims are humans. They have emotions, they have feelings like all other people, and most of the worries that they have are also very similar to other people. Do my kids get a good education? Can I have a nice car? But other than that, I think it's very important to know that there's a great diversity among Muslims, and finally, that Muslims share a lot of values with other religious faith groups.
Have you studied any other religions that have influenced your viewpoints?
I studied Islamic studies, and I wouldn't even say that I really studied a religion there, but I studied how Muslims live, how they lead their lives, which intellectual, philosophical, and religious debates they are having. But I'm not one of those Islamic researchers that are really going into the dogmatics and are themselves normative in that way. I see myself and I understand my work as describing the life of Muslims, and thereby also the importance that and the relevance that Islam has in their lives.
What impact do you think the increase of Muslim immigrants in Europe will have on European views of Muslims and Muslim culture?
On the local level, will enable people to meet a variety of individuals and communities, and actually will enable them to have an exchange with people who have different religions, who have different worldviews. And that means a lot of potential for dialogue and potential for conflicts. So both actually, I think, will shape everyday life much more than before. And I mean, one thing that immigration contributed to is a great variety of cuisine. and restaurants. I mean, this is something that a lot of people think of as something very positive. When Italians came to Germany, for instance, in the 60s and 70s, they were called spaghetti fresser. So something like, you know, they're eating spaghettis. Now everybody is a spaghetti fresser because that became one of the main dishes.
What sparked your interest in learning about and researching the Muslim culture?
I was at first doing research about life in Muslim majority countries, for instance, about Egypt. And I later on came into a class that was doing a project on mosques in my hometown in Berlin. And that started my interest in Muslims in minority situations and in Western Europe.
Is there any media that you can recommend for people that are interested in learning more, such as books, movies, or other productions that can grant more insight into the different Muslim cultures?
I think a comedy show is really interesting that is called Little Mosque in the Prairie. It was produced in Canada. And I think it's fascinating because it is situated in a little city or in a little town. And because it's in that little town, it allows it allows a lot of individuals to come together in that little mosque, and they're all kind of very special types. So this is, I think, to understand the diversity of the Muslim community. Most important and the basic thing is that Muslims are humans. They have emotions, they have feelings like all other people, and most of the worries that they have are also very similar to other people.